please join our YouTube community and subscribe today, as 90% of viewers haven't hit that subscribe button yet. Jing Yixian stood in the distance and watched all this quietly. When everyone saw him coming back, they already knew that they had successfully protected everyone again, and couldn't help singing praises loudly. The endowment ceremony ended, and the crowd left the church one after another. In the overcrowded church, only Yuan Kongya and Jing Yixian were left. Seeing Jing Yixian's covered arm, Yuan Kongya slowly walked over and opened his clothes. "How did you get hurt so badly?" As she spoke, she put her right hand on Jing Yixian's arm and began to treat him. Jing Yixian just let her contain the injury a little bit, then stopped her. "You have used your abilities too many times today, treat me tomorrow." Yuan Kongya smiled slightly, his smile was as cold as ice and snow. "Who is calling?" Xiao Holian from Yangqing Base, Wei Dinghai from Chaoyu Base, or Xingtian Army from Qingpu Base? Jing Yixian covered his arms, and replied, "It's the Yangqing Base and Chaoyu Base that jointly attacked." A flash of surprise flashed in Yuan Kongya's eyes. "Oh, the two of them came to attack us at the same time?" Jing Yixian told Yuan Kongya all the ins and outs of the matter. After Yuan Kongya finished listening, there was a look of surprise in his eyes. "In addition to our snow sect and the 4 major bases, there is such a mysterious and powerful force in Tianhai City? Could it be that the destruction of the Xishan base has something to do with them?" Jing Yixian said, "That mysterious force is related to a man named Zhang Yi. Once we received information from that place, we mentioned this person. It now appears that the inextricable connections have converged into a clear line. That Zhang Yi is a foreigner, and a very powerful foreigner. It can even be said that he is at the top level in the entire Tianhai City. If not, what did he use to contend against the Xishan base for so long, even leading to the destruction of the Xishan base?" Yuan Kongya bowed his head and pondered. However, various evidences show that the destruction of the Xishan base is related to the missile from the Jiangnan region. Jing Yixian nodded. "That's true. But even so, it has an inseparable relationship with Zhang Yi. I think this person should not be underestimated. He must hold a powerful force in his hands. And according to the information we received before, the fact that he has a huge amount of supplies in his hands may not be a spoof. It's real." A gleam of light burst out from Yuan Kongya's dark pupils. "If that's the case, this person really needs to pay attention." Jing Yixian came over and asked, "Do you want to send Dafa Ling over there to test him?" Yuan Kongya looked at Jing Yixian. "Oh? Testing? Do you mean to see how big his potential is?" Jing Yixian smiled and said, "If he really has enough strength, maybe we can consider wooing him to fight against those bases together." Yuan Kongya's brows stretched out, as if a little moved. Jing Yixian continued to persuade, "In the entire Tianhai City, the sites with real important resources are all occupied by the 4 shelters. Although we have a large number of people in the snow worship cult, we are extremely scarce in resources. Although the existence of blood vines allows us to obtain food through replacement. But it is not a long-term solution after all. It's like today, when the 2 bases of Chaoyu and Yangqing join forces to attack, it would be very difficult for us to resist. If it wasn't for their scruples and their refusal to fight to the death with us, I am afraid that the snow worship cult will not be able to survive today's crisis. So, I think we should develop a helper." Jing Yixian's eyes dimmed, "Especially we need a helper like us." After thinking for a moment, Yuan Kongya nodded slowly. She thought what Jing Yixian said was very reasonable. Relying on the current strength of their snow worship cult alone, in a life-and-death struggle, any of the 3 bases may be able to defeat them. She still needs to procrastinate. Wait long enough to make yourself stronger. Well, let the Dafa decree go and verify his strength. If he really has the ability to fight against the base, maybe from now on, the structure of Tianhai City will undergo earth-shaking changes. Shelter, Zhou Kir's infirmary. She was wearing a white coat and was carefully examining the glass slides under the microscope. Zhang Yi leaned on the table behind her and asked lazily, "How about it? Do you know this thing?" What Zhou Ke was researching at this time was the stimulant that Zhang Yi had obtained from Gao Yuan and others. At that time, it allowed ordinary people to instantly have a physique comparable to that of a foreigner, which really shocked Zhang Yi. Therefore, he became very interested in this drug and wanted to study it. If the effect is really good, then he can use it for the people in the shelter later. Even if the side effects are severe, it can save your life at critical times. Or just knowing its medicinal effect, it will be easier to deal with people who possess this medicine in the future. Zhou Ke raised her head slowly, turned around and said to Zhang Yi, "This drug is a military stimulant, usually only equipped by soldiers on the battlefield. It is very powerful and can greatly improve a person's physical function, and it can make people stay awake for 3 days and 3 nights." She sighed. "I have seen this drug in the teacher's laboratory before, but it is the first time I have seen someone use it. In terms of efficacy, it's more than 10 times stronger than the one I gave you before. Of course, the intensity of the side effects is also enormous." Zhang Yi asked curiously, "How big is it?" Zhou Ke smiled mysteriously. "This drug can only improve the body's utilization of energy and speed up the body's metabolism. It is actually a crazy overdraft. The last time I used it, it's very common to lose more than a dozen caddies. And it will make people feel sore all over the body. It takes more than half a month for people with good physique to recover. People with poor physique," she spread her hands, "maybe directly and die." Zhang Yi couldn't help but smiled and sighed. Sure enough, there is no such thing as a free dinner in this world. The kind of medicine that makes people stronger without side effects really doesn't exist. But Zhou Ke frowned slightly after hearing this, and after thinking for a while, said slowly, "Perhaps, not necessarily." Zhang Yi fixed his eyes. "Is there really such a thing?" Zhou Ke nodded, then shook his head again. "I've heard in the past that the military has been researching this kind of drug that can improve the combat ability of soldiers, and try to avoid too many side effects to prevent them from continuing to fight. Although the side effects may not be completely eliminated, they can be reduced to an extremely low level. Of course, the price of this medicine is also outrageously high. So far, it has not become a standard stimulant in the military." Zhang Yi said, "It means that we may meet in the future, but the probability is not so high, is it? Well, just keep in mind." He crossed his arms and murmured in a low voice, "It seems that we must be cautious when meeting ordinary people in the future. The power of technology cannot be underestimated." Zhou Ke took off her white gloves and was about to clean the experimental equipment. Zhang Yi casually chatted with her about other topics. "Ke, do you remember the rat poison I used before?" Rat poison?" Zhou Ke looked back at him curiously, not understanding why he suddenly mentioned this. "The last time you used it was when you were in Yuelu community. Do you still have that thing?" The smile on the corner of Zhang Yi's mouth was slightly mysterious. "It might be useful to keep it. People, it's better to be cautious and be prepared." He touched his nose and asked, "You said earlier that its lethal dose is 0.1 g. If you use a small amount, what effect will it have?" Zhou Ke didn't know what Zhang Yi wanted to do, but she still replied truthfully, "If it's too small, you don't need to think about it. The body's detoxification function can eliminate it. However, if the dosage is well controlled, the kidneys will not be able to completely eliminate it at around 5%, and it will cause toxicity in the body." Zhang Yi nodded. "Will he die?" Zhou Ke shook her head. "Of course not. Otherwise, how could there be such a thing as a lethal dose?" But she said, "It's just that if you continue to take it, the effect will be completely different. It causes the organs of the body to slowly fail and, if left untreated, can lead to death." Having said that, Zhou Ke couldn't help but smile. However, in today's harsh environment, the human body itself is very fragile. If you take this drug again, you may have to wait for death slowly. Zhang Yi nodded. "I see. What you said is very reasonable." Zhou Ke glanced at him and asked with a smile, "Could it be that there are mice in the house?" Zhang Yi's smile became more and more mysterious. "Not in the house. But out there." A group of students gathered around the igloo to enjoy the fire. The fire was not thriving because it was getting more and more difficult to get fuel. Around Shujia town, almost all the dead trees were cut down, and all the furniture was burned. The old, weak, women and children left in Shujia town had started to burn their clothes, but they only burned a little while cooking. As for warming themselves by the fire, they didn't even dare to think about it. Damn it, why do we have to live so aggrieved? Wu Chenyu gritted his teeth, his eyes were full of resentment. The reason why he struggles in pain every day is because he clearly knows that there is a magnificent, warm and luxurious villa with plenty of food on the other side of the river. The class committee member Shen Miaoke said in a low voice, "If you want to blame, you can only blame Teacher Liang for being too irresponsible. Since she, Yang Xinxin, and Lu Karen can all enter that shelter, why don't you try to get us in too?" To put it bluntly, she still only cares about whether she is living well or not. She doesn't take us to heart. The boy next to him, He Wenqing, sneered. "If I knew this earlier, why not let us stay at the Shishan base? It's a bit tiring to be there, but at least someone provides food and it's relatively warm. Even if you die someday, at least you will die in a comfortable environment." He tightened the thick cotton coat on his body. People always know how to cherish after they lose it. If I had known this is the life after leaving the Shishan base, I might as well die there. Yi Xiaotian was sleeping beside him, but when he heard their conversation getting abnormal, he couldn't help frowning. "You're almost done. Do you really think death is better than life?" He glanced at these classmates, sneered and mocked. "If I let you experience the experiment process, I believe you will not say such things again." For Liang Yu, Yi Xiaotian was grateful. Because the pain he has endured is incomprehensible to others, so he cherishes the happiness of living freely now. When Yi Xiaotian spoke, the others did not dare to refute. But everyone still complained quietly. "We're just talking casually. But Teacher Liang can also fight for us. How can she bear to watch us suffer?" The topic continues. Yi Xiaotian didn't want to listen anymore, turned around and continued to sleep. Seeing this, the others became bold again. "If you want me to say, you should have a good talk with Teacher Liang and let her take us into the shelter." "That's right. That place is so big, we only need one house. We are not greedy, as long as we have a warm house and food every day." "Forget it, Teacher Liang dare not. She has become Zhang Yi's person now. Maybe she can enter the shelter because she traded her body for it." "Wow. Is it true?" That's probably the case. Don't look at Teacher Liang, who is always serious, but I think she is the sullen type, and she is slutty in her bones." The students vented their dissatisfaction with Liang Yu unscrupulously through words. But soon they stopped at the same time. Because judging by the time, Liang Yu was about to come to deliver food to them. "Teacher Liang, we miss you so much." The students looked at Liang Yu with grievances, tears glistening in their eyes. Liang Yu just put the food on the ground, and said to them, "Be careful recently, the surroundings are not very flat. Except for going out to find food, it is best to stay in the igloo at other times. By the way, Shujia town has a lot of cellars for storing food. It's best for you to hide in the cellars. Do you understand?" When the students heard these words, they all panicked. Wu Chenyu stood up quickly, and said to Liang Yu with a look of fear, "Mr. Liang, since it's so dangerous, why didn't you take us back? Isn't a shelter the safest place?" Seeing their pale faces, Liang Yu couldn't help but think of Yang Xinxin and Lu Karen. Most of these people committed cold violence against the two of them. Anyway, there has been no movement of other forces invading around the shelter recently, so Liang Yu naturally doesn't want to make extra troubles. You can't think about relying on the teacher for everything. You have grown up, and you have to learn to deal with all problems by yourself. Hide in the cellar. Even if a dangerous enemy comes, the main target will not be you. As long as you hide well, there will be no danger." Wu Chenyu and others still refuse to give up. "Teacher, if danger happens, it will be too late. It's safest to take us to the shelter. Zhang Yi and the others are so powerful, and you are also good at fighting. Isn't it easy to protect us? She didn't explain anything anymore, just sighed softly, take care of yourself. Listen to me and hide well. Teacher Liang. Teacher Liang. Why is this damn woman so cruel? Wu Qingyu punched the wall angrily, his eyes were full of hatred. Why do you give us hope, but you also bring us despair? Yi Xiaotian walked over and took a piece of food on his own. Seeing this, Wu Qingyu also hurried over, pretending to distribute it to everyone. The food Zhang Yi gave them tasted good, after all, they were all insurance products. They devoured so much that there was not a single grain of rice left. Yangqing Base and Zhaoyu Base, these two major forces have started to target the so-called mysterious force since they came back from worshipping the Snow Sect. They first conducted a large number of investigations, and it was almost certain that the force was located in the vicinity of Yunk Manor and Shujia Town. On the side of the Yangqing Base, the person sent was Dong Hu. Dong Hu led his men, and when they came to the edge of Lujiang district, he asked his men to hide the car, and then proceeded on foot. They walked cautiously through the ice and snow, and followed the instructions on the equipment, all the way to the vicinity of Shujia Town. From a long distance, they saw the large house built of ice and snow through the telescope. Looking across the river, I also saw the stun ice barrier. Dong Hu couldn't help exhaling, and sighed, can this thing really be built by manpower? The thick wall is like a small Great Wall of ice and snow. As high as 20 meters, the thickness also reached an astonishing 10 meters. I seem to understand why they have been able to compete with the Shishan base with the strongest armed forces for so long. Dong Hu's eyes showed seriousness. He ordered everyone, be careful. This is not an easy opponent to deal with. If we are not careful, our lives will stay here. Dong Hu took out the equipment and confirmed that the satellite phone signal of the plateau was within the large snow house in front. Dong Hu thought for a while and called a clever subordinate over. Go and investigate the situation there first. The subordinate had vigilant eyes, and left the main force like a snow ape, heading towards Shujia Town. He breathed a sigh of relief, and then continued to use the snow house as a cover to head inside. But along the way, he found that this was not a lively village. The spy confirmed the location from a distance, and did not dare to approach, but chose to retreat quietly. He reminded his subordinates, there can be extremely dangerous masters hiding here. Once we find anything abnormal, we will retreat immediately. Not long after, the spy returned here. He reported to Dong Huhui with a look of joy, head, there is a deserted village in front. There is no security around, and there are no living people in it. I found the location of the signal source, and I didn't startle the snake. Dong Hu's face was obviously a little surprised. What? How could this happen? He repeatedly confirmed the situation of Zhu Jiazhen to the spies, and his doubts became deeper and deeper. At this moment, his gaze caught sight of the ice and snow barrier across the river. Dong Hu suddenly realized something. Could it be that the truly powerful forces are behind that line of defense? But why is the location of the signal source here? Could it be a trap? Dong Hu was very puzzled, but since he came, he at least wanted to get some useful information before going back. Dong Hu himself didn't expect that after being cautious for so long, they finally found a group of sleeping young people in that snow house. It can't be said that he was defenseless, it can only be said that he slept better than a pig. As soon as he gave an order, the members of the investigation team acted quickly to control the sleeping students. Yi Xiaotian's intuition is relatively keen. He opened his eyes suddenly, and saw that no one knew anyone who appeared in the snow house, and immediately became vigilant. Who are you? Get out of here. Without further ado, an investigator bit his neck with a huge hand like iron tongs, and directly threw him heavily against the wall. If you dare to say another word, I will break your neck, he said coldly. Although he is a reformed person, physically stronger than ordinary people, but the person in front of him is obviously a seasoned veteran. Yi Xiaotian gritted his teeth and let out an angry roar, exerting all his strength. He actually broke his palm and kicked him 3 or 4 meters away. A cold light flashed in Dong Hu's eyes. Yi Xiaotian knew that he was not the opponent of so many people, so he planned to run away. But Donghu's tall figure stood in front of him. "Go away!" Yi Xiaotian gathered all his strength, and punched Donghu in the face with a punch. But the next moment, a fiery red light flashed in front of his eyes, and he felt his vision blurred for a moment, and he felt an extremely severe pain in his abdomen. Yi Xiaotian spat out a mouthful of blood, and fell to his knees on the snow, unconscious. Donghu immediately ordered people to tie up all the students, and then took them back to the leader Xiao Honglian for disposal. As for what was behind the tall ice and snow city wall, he didn't dare to go and check. Inside the shelter, in Zhang Yi's room, a reminder sound came from the mobile phone, and he asked Tuahua to place the satellite phone in Shujia town. As long as the signal is far away, he will receive the reminder. Zhang Yi turned on the phone, watched the signal go away slowly, and narrowed his eyes slowly. Sure enough, what should come is here. He asked Yang Xinxin to help tamper with the satellite phone, so that he could monitor its location in real time. He walked to the window and looked in the direction of Shujia town. In the snowstorm, a sharp light flashed in his eyes. How will things go? Now I'm a little bit more looking forward to it. Thinking of this, Zhang Yi walked out of the room and went to the console to find Yang Xinxin. Yang Xinxin spends most of her time at the console. Zhang Yi came to the console, and Yang Xinxin was wearing a black Lolita costume and sitting in a wheelchair, eating potato chips and watching the screen intently. Brother Zhang Yi, you are here. Yang Xinxin smiled sweetly. Zhang Yi smiled and nodded, walked over and stroked her soft hair. Won't it be boring to watch a movie here alone? It's okay. I just pass the time, but I'm not lazy. Yang Xinxin said with an obedient look on her face. Sitting next to Yang Xinxin, Zhang Yi asked with a smile, how is the research on the data from the satellite phone I gave you a few days ago? Is there any important information? Yang Xinxin said to Zhang Yi, these people are very cautious, and the satellite phone has not been used for a long time, so the information is relatively scarce. But through the chat records, you can confirm the identity of the person you killed. His name is Gao Yuan. He is the cousin of Xiao Honglian, the leader of the Yangsheng base, and the captain of a team. Hearing this, Zhang Yi couldn't help putting his hands on his forehead. How could it be such a coincidence? He accidentally killed the relatives of the leader of the Yangsheng base. It seems that this matter is difficult to resolve. Yang Xinxin smiled lightly. It's just a cousin, not a real brother. It's hard to say what the relationship between them is. Zhang Yi shrugged. We don't know the relationship between the family. Anyway, just be prepared. Yang Xinxin continued. In addition, according to his chat records, the Yangsheng base and Chaoyu base are closely related. These are all information obtained through chatting with some people in Yangsheng base. There is no accurate source of information for the specific situation. She looked at Zhang Yi and said with some vigilance, brother, if this is the case, we may need to face the joint attack of two Al-Qaeda organizations at the same time. Zhang Yi took a deep breath. He said calmly, I've thought about this, and it's nothing more than the worst unfolding that can happen. However, since the protracted battle with the Xishan base, my fear of these large organizations has disappeared. They are all in charge of the rebel army, and if they don't get big weapons like large-yield missiles, they won't pose too much threat to us. Having said that, he slowly narrowed his eyes. From the bottom of my heart, I also hope to play against them. Only in this way can they understand that the site of the Xishan base now belongs to me, Zhang Yi. They are not allowed to cross the boundary and disturb my life. Take it once and let them understand our strength, so that everyone can live a peaceful life in the future. Zhang Yi now is not the same as he was then. Yang Xinxin looked at Zhang Yi, who was full of confidence but cautious, with a smile on his lips full of admiration. By the way, brother Zhang Yi, their chat records also mention some things about Snow Worship Sect. Although it has nothing to do with us, I still want to tell you. Zhang Yi raised his eyebrows. He didn't have a good impression of the organization called Snow Worship Sect. Tell me, what happened to them? Yang Xinxin said to Zhang Yi, through the conversations of Gao Yuan and others, it can be seen that their attitude towards Snow Worship Sect is very bad. Therefore, I think the contradiction between them is relatively sharp. Zhang Yi thought for a while and asked, so what? Do you mean that if we are attacked by the Yangqing base, we can consider enlisting the snow worship cult as a helper? Yang Xinxin blinked and said with a smile, who knows? But if you can have one more helper, it's better than one more enemy, right? Helpers with unknown origins are sometimes more terrifying than enemies. He changed the subject, but if it's worth using, I don't mind squeezing them. Dong Hu left Shujia town with Wu Qingyu and others, and rushed back to Yangqing base overnight. Keep an eye on them, I'll go in and report to the leader immediately. It was already very late at this time. Dong Hu still went to find Xiao Honglian. He knew that Xiao Honglian slept for a very short time every day, only about 5 hours. Sure enough, when Xiao Honglian came to work, Dong Hu knocked on the door and entered the office. Xiao Honglian asked without raising his head, what's the result of the investigation? Dong Hu immediately narrated everything he saw. We found Gao Yuan's lost mobile phone in Shujia town. We also captured a group of students who claimed to be from Tianqing College, and their teacher was beside Zhang Yi. As for Zhang Yi, I haven't seen it. But I found a thick ice and snow barrier in Yunk Manor across the river from Shujia town. If my guess is correct, Zhang Yi and his men are living behind that barrier. They also relied on that barrier to block the attack of the Xishan base. Dong Hu expressed his judgment. Xiao Honglian frowned slightly. She put down the document in her hand, and looked at Dong Hu with deep eyes. Where are those students? Dong Hu replied, it's just outside, do you want to interrogate yourself? Xiao Honglian stood up from the chair, let's go and have a look. At this time, Wu Qingyu and others were thrown into a workshop of the refinery. The surrounding machines were still rumbling, and the temperature was much higher than the outside world. This relieved the chills on the students' bodies, but it did not warm their hearts. Dong Hu said to Xiao Honglian, there is another person who passed out. He should have some connection with Xishan base, because I found the body transformation technology of Xishan base on him. Xiao Honglian, that person will be left to study later. Tell me everything you know. Otherwise, you won't want to experience the interrogation methods at the Yangqing base. Wu Qingyu was very clever, and quickly knelt down and bumped his head to the ground. Please rest assured, I will tell you everything you want to know. I only ask you to save my life. I'll tell you everything I know. Don't kill me, don't kill me. Who do you want to know about? Whether it's Zhang Yi or teacher Liang Yu, I can tell you about them. Seeing their humble appearance, Xiao Honglian felt a little disgusted in her heart. Because she understands that it is impossible for such a useless and cowardly person to have access to Zhang Yi's core information. First of all, tell me, where did you get this satellite phone? We don't know about this either. We've never seen it. Displeasure had already flashed across Xiao Honglian's eyes. Wu Qingyu thumped in his heart, realizing that something was wrong. His head was running fast, and he suddenly had an idea. This thing was left by Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi? Did he really do it? Murder intent began to emerge in Xiao Honglian's eyes. Tell me, how many people are Zhang Yi and his subordinates in total? What kind of ability does each of them have? Also, how many weapons and supplies do they have in their hands? This topic caused the brains of Wu Qingyu and the others to crash. They don't know how strong Zhang Yi is, what his abilities are, and the abilities of his subordinates. I seem to have heard that Zhang Yi's ability is space. The people under him are all very powerful. One of them named Yang Xinxin is a top hacker. There's also a guy named Lu Karen, who's pretty good at mechanics. Oh. There's a woman named Yang Xia next to him, that is the big star Yang Xia. Also, our teacher Liang Yu is with him now. Teacher Liang's skills are very good. She is a national martial arts master. She once served as a high-level bodyguard. She is very powerful. Do you have any other information? Think about it again. Only these words are not enough for me to keep your lives. Xiao Honglian spoke to them calmly. The students felt their heads spinning. Are they going to die here? No. We have other values, don't kill us. You keep us, Teacher Liang is very soft-hearted. You can use us to exchange with Teacher Liang. No matter what conditions you ask, she will agree. Yes, Teacher Liang cares about us the most, she won't just let us die. If you are going to fight Zhang Yi, we can still show you the way. Hearing the student's words, a mocking smile appeared on the corner of Xiao Holian's mouth, and she stood up without much interest. She waved her hand, lock them up. Give them some time to think about their own role. If you really can't think of anything, just cut off their sacrificial flags when you go out. But Zhuge Qingting came over and said to her, maybe we can give it a try. Try what? Xiao Holian asked indifferently. Zhuge Qingting said, these people are Liang Yu's students, and Liang Yu is now Zhang Yi's subordinate. Maybe the relationship between them is really good. We don't know what Zhang Yi's strength is now. We can use these students as bargaining chips to pretend to negotiate with him first. In this way, we can judge how strong Zhang Yi's whole cards are. Xiao Holian looked at him with some surprise. Do you think it's useful to threaten Zhang Yi or Liang Yu with these useless students? The corner of her mouth was full of sarcasm. Don't be stupid, what time is this now? This is the end of the world. Everyone is doing their best to keep themselves alive. Only those who have value are worthy of being exchanged. If they look like trash, who will pay for them? Even their teacher, Liang Yu, couldn't be so stupid. Zhuge Qingting lowered his head and smiled. My great leader, you must understand that not every woman in this world is as sensible as you. Maybe their teacher Liang Yu is a soft-hearted woman? And from my point of view, since they can live near Zhang Yi's shelter, it means that Liang Yu still has some attachment to them. After listening to Zhuge Qingting's words, Xiao Holian also felt that there was some truth. You mean that their teacher, Liang Yu, might be a virgin? Zhuge Qingting said with a smile, I only hope she is the best. In that case, we will have a chance. Xiao Holian listened to Zhuge Qingting's suggestion, and decided to contact Zhang Yi to test it out. It would be best if they cared about these people, and then the advantage of the negotiation will be in our hands. Xiao Holian asked Zhuge Qingting to find a way to contact Zhang Yi. So Zhuge Qingting sent several members of the investigation team under Dong Hu to deliver a letter to Zhang Yi. As for Wu Qingyu and others, they were detained in an underground cell. They were all wearing improved explosive collars around their necks. The sun has been hanging high, but people on this planet can hardly feel its temperature. Zhang Yi and others sat around the long table and finished their breakfast. Liang Yu stood up and said to Zhang Yi, I'll go to the opposite side. Zhang Yi raised his head, oh, yes, go early and come back early. It's quite cold outside, don't freeze yourself. Liang Yu couldn't help biting his lips lightly due to this gentle concern, and his complexion was a little rosy. She didn't dare to look at Yang Xia and Zhou Kur next to her, because she didn't need to look to know that there must be a bit of jealousy in their eyes. She took the food from Zhang Yi, then put on her winter clothes and left the shelter. Zhang Yi didn't look at her back, but still slowly picked up a small octopus ball with a fork, stuffed it into his mouth and chewed slowly. What would Liang Yu do when she found out that all her students had disappeared? Zhang Yi was a little curious. There may even be radical moves. I hope I don't cause too much trouble. Otherwise, I can only ask you to leave the shelter. Liang Yu came to Shujia town with food. She walked into the igloo where the students lived as usual, but when she opened the curtain, she found that there was no one there. Her heartbeat accelerated suddenly, and she felt a bad premonition in her heart. Where did everyone go? Was it kidnapped? Liang Yu thought of the surrounding forces mentioned by Zhang Yi before, and thought of the worst possible outcome. Could it be that they were taken away by some powerful force? Liang Yu looked at the dead ice field around her, with the cold wind howling. She was like a headless fly, even the students who wanted to find her couldn't start. I can only ask Zhang Yi to help me. She didn't want to cause trouble to Zhang Yi, after all, he was kind enough to take her in, and Zhang Yi was also very kind to her. Their disappearance will not be accidental. If someone really shot at them, then the target must be me. Liang Yu raised her head and exhaled a stream of white smoke. I can't let them die because of me. Liang Yu hurried back to the shelter. Her anxious appearance attracted everyone's attention. Zhang Yi also looked at her curiously. What's wrong with you? Liang Yu ran up to Zhang Yi and said out of breath, Zhang Yi, it's not good, something serious happened. My students, they all disappeared. Everyone was surprised when they heard the words. What? Disappeared? How could this be? Are all the dozen or so of them gone? Could it be that he went out to find wood and food? Liang Yu shook her head. I've searched everywhere I can. I haven't found a single person. Zhang Yi, I wonder if those forces have already extended their tentacles. Zhang Yi crossed his hands and frowned. It's very possible. But I don't understand why they want to take your students away. Could it be that you had some enemies before? Liang Yu was also very confused at this moment. I don't know. I have taught at Tianqing College for 3 years, and I haven't made any enemies with anyone. Zhang Yi comforted, don't be anxious about this matter for the time being. Anxiety is useless, we have to calm down and find a way. Zhang Yi looked into Liang Yu's eyes seriously, and said sincerely, Liang Yu, first of all, I want to explain something to you. I am definitely not responsible for their disappearance. If you don't believe me, I can let you see the information of the shelter. Monitor. I was in the shelter all day yesterday and didn't go out at all. Hearing this, Liang Yu's eyes widened, and she said anxiously, No. Zhang Yi, how could I suspect that you did it? It's okay, let's check the surrounding surveillance to make sure no strangers appear nearby. Zhang Yi called Xiao AI, the artificial intelligence of the shelter, and asked it to call out all the surveillance videos around the shelter from yesterday to now. Soon, the 100-inch screen on the wall of the living room played video content of more than 100 surveillance images. After high-speed fast playback, it didn't take long for everyone to finish watching the monitored content. Yesterday, the area around the shelter was as quiet as usual, and no one was found coming in or out. This also ruled out everyone's suspicion at least the disappearance of the students was not their own hands. Liang Yu breathed a sigh of relief, the result she was most afraid of did not happen. Zhang Yi folded his hands on his chin, and said with a serious face, This is going to be troublesome. We don't know who the perpetrator is and what their purpose is. That puts us in complete passivity. Although it is known that there are still 4 major organizations in Tianhai City, it cannot be completely ruled out that it is the actions of other unknown small forces. For us, it's almost impossible to take the initiative to do anything. But if the other party kidnaps Liang Yu's students, there must be some conspiracy, so I think we should wait. Maybe the other party will contact us. Liang Yu clenched her fists. But, what is there for me to be plotted by others? I don't remember who I have offended. Zhang Yi said with a smile, This question is very complicated, but since it is your student who is being arrested, who else could it be if it is not you? Of course, I'm just raising a possibility. Liang Yu frowned tightly. At this moment, her cold hand was grasped by Zhang Yi's big warm hand. Liang Yu's heart trembled, she raised her head, and Zhang Yi looked at her with gentle eyes. Liang Yu, don't worry, your business is my business. I promised you that I would help you take care of those students, so you won't break your promise and lose weight. As soon as there is news, I will act immediately. Liang Yu's heart was warm, but now she was at a loss and could only follow Zhang Yi's arrangement. Zhang Yi smiled and narrowed his eyes, but his heart was full of joy. Finally solve those troubles. Zhang Yi asked Lu Karen and Yang Xinxin to take Liang Yu back to have a good rest. After they left, Zhou Kur came to Zhang Yi with a worried face, leaned on him and asked, Zhang Yi, could it be that one of those forces is coming to attack us? Well, that's right. Zhang Yi nodded and admitted the matter without hesitation. Yang Xia sighed lightly, I haven't lived a stable life for a few days, why are they fighting again? Zhang Yi smiled disapprovingly. You are wrong. It's not war that disrupts our secure lives. It's that we traded war for a short period of tranquility. War and fighting are the norm in the last days, but peace is not. Zhang Yi leaned on the sofa, thinking about how to deal with the subsequent war in his mind. If it's just two forces attacking at the same time, they should be able to defend themselves. But, is there any possibility of the four of them joining forces? Zhang Yi frowned slightly. If that's the case, it might be a little troublesome. Shokur heard the words, couldn't help but asked with a smile, "Don't you feel bad? Distressed?" "Distressed for what?" Zhang Yi asked back with a smile. Shokur blinked. "You don't have any thoughts about Liang Yu? Or, you have never been tempted by her?" Zhang Yi smiled lightly. "I admire her very much. It would be best if she can become a reliable friend. But before that, she must get through the current hurdle." In the afternoon, Zhang Yi called Uncle Yu and Fatty Su over and informed them to be ready to fight at any time. Because people from Yanqing base have invaded the area around the shelter. Ever since we killed the aliens at Chaoyu base, I knew that this battle was inevitable. Fatty Su sighed. "It's really troublesome. Those guys can't just stop and stop. Isn't it good to live in the end times? Do you have to fight for some territory?" Zhang Yi calmly explained, "At any time, there will be ambitious people who want to gain higher power. When the goal of survival is achieved, their desires will expand infinitely. Not everyone wants as much as we do. And from a security point of view, only by eradicating all threats around me can I be absolutely safe. Let alone them, even if I find that there are small armed groups around, I will kill them." Speaking of this, Zhang Yi encouraged Fatty Su with a smile and said, "But you don't need to worry too much. Everything is in my plan. As long as we let them see our strength and let them understand that we are hard nuts to crack, they will naturally not dare to attack again." Uncle Yu crossed his arms and laughed loudly. "Anyway, it's over. Our good life is achieved by punching. If anyone dares to disturb us, we must subdue them." Fatty Su sighed, and rested his fat face in one hand. "Now that things have come to an end, I have no choice but to fight." At this moment, there was a faint sound of an engine outside the shelter. The eyes of the three people suddenly became sharp. "Someone is coming. It's a car." Zhang Yi instinctively jumped up from the sofa, and rushed to the window on the second floor. Looking into the distance through the one-way glass, he found a modified snowmobile on the road a few hundred meters outside Yunk Manor. People from Yanqing base? Why is there only one car? Is it a scout or an envoy? While thinking, Zhang Yi took out a large sniper from a different space. The snowmobile was driving towards this side at a fast speed, and it seemed that it had no intention of stopping at all. It's just that when passing the front of Yunk Manor, a fine steel crossbow suddenly appeared from the window, and then a black arrow shot into the ice wall. After finishing this step, the snowmobile quickly left. "Wanna go?" There was a sneer on the corner of Zhang Yi's mouth. He opened the window, set up a sniper and aimed at the tracks of the snowmobile. Boom! After a gunshot, 800 meters away, the tracks of the snowmobile were directly broken, the car skidded on the road, and then fell to the ground and slid towards the river. Holding the big sniper in his arms, Zhang Yi jumped out of the window directly. Zhang Yi and Uncle Yu rode on Huahua's body, and after a few jumps, they chased after the snowmobile. When they arrived, they saw two soldiers wearing Fire Emblem combat uniforms crawling out from inside. One man's leg was crushed, and the other tried to take him with him. But after seeing Zhang Yi and the others, he resolutely gave up his teammates and ran back. Zhang Yi raised his gun and aimed at his calf and shot. The soldier's calf was pierced, and he fell on the snow after screaming. Another soldier wanted to draw his gun to resist, but Uncle Yu directly held his neck, preventing him from moving. It doesn't look like a stranger. But these two soldiers were ruthless enough, and they also knew that there would be no way out after being caught, so when they gritted their teeth, their faces quickly turned purple, black blood flowed from the corners of their mouths, and they died. Suicide? Zhang Yi frowned. Seeing this, Uncle Yu stretched out his hand to break their jaws, and said to Zhang Yi, "Poison is a capsule hidden between the teeth. Many scouts will do this. It is to avoid being captured and leaking information." Zhang Yi took a breath helplessly. "They are actually smart. But they died just like that. I don't know what purpose they came here for. At this moment, Fatty Sue ran over panting behind him. He held a black crossbow bolt in his hand, with a white cloth tied on it. Boss, they left something behind. Take a look. When Zhang Yi saw this, his pupils shrank, and he immediately scolded Fatty Sue, "Stop, don't move." He looked at the crossbow in his hand, and then realized something. His face paled for a while. Slowly, put down the crossbow in your hand. Fatty Sue trembled, squatted down slowly, and carefully placed the crossbow bolt on the ice. Stand back. Zhang Yi made a gesture to Fatty Sue, and then quickly opened the different space to put the crossbow bolt in. His different space can be divided into separate areas. Even if there's a bomb in the crossbow, it can be detonated inside. Gauntlet? Or do you want to negotiate with me? Zhang Yi didn't dare to be careless. He raised his head and glanced at Fatty Sue. Zhang Yi reminded, "Throw away your gloves and get another pair." Fatty Sue understood Zhang Yi's meaning, and regardless of the cold, he hurriedly took off his gloves, and flung them away like a snake or a scorpion. Zhang Yi took Uncle Yu and Fatty Sue back to the shelter. He first called Zhou Keir, came to her infirmary, and asked Zhou Keir to check the crossbow bolts and cloth strips. Take a look to see if there's any poison on it. Seeing how careful Zhang Yi was, Zhou Keir couldn't help asking, since they are here to deliver letters, they shouldn't use this method, right? Be careful sailing for thousands of years. When you are the most relaxed, it is often the time when the enemy is the easiest to succeed. Uncle Yu also nodded beside him, and said in agreement, on the battlefield, any sloppy actions may cost lives. This loss, we did not suffer less back then. Zhou Keir put on gloves and inspected the crossbow bolts and white cloth very professionally. As a result, after dripping the test agent on it, Zhou Keir clearly saw a color change on it. Her face also changed instantly. It's really poisonous. Fatty Sue's face turned pale with fright. Thinking of how careless he was just now, if he hadn't been wearing gloves, he might have lost his life at this time, so his legs felt a little weak. Zhang Yi was relatively calm. There can be no slack for the enemy. They are thinking about taking our lives all the time. The reason why I can guess this is because if I were them, I would also use this method. After all, if I can kill one, it is one. Zhou Keir took a glass cover from the side, and covered the crossbow and the white cloth. There are words on it. Would you like to come and have a look? Zhang Yi walked over cautiously, and sure enough, he saw a string of strange codes written on the unfolded white cloth. What is this? He thought it was something like a gauntlet, but he didn't expect it to be a string. The few people present did not recognize anyone, so Zhang Yi had to go over and call Yang Xinxin, who was proficient in computer technology, over. He didn't hide it from Liang Yu, and called her over together. If Zhang Yi hides something from Liang Yu, it will arouse her suspicion. Yang Xinxin recognized the string of characters at the first glance. This is an address. If I guess correctly, you can use this address to contact the Yangsheng base. Zhang Yi asked calmly, is it safe? Yang Xinxin's mouth raised a confident smile. Brother, with me here, do you think it will be dangerous? Zhang Yi smiled and nodded. That's good. I knew Xinxin you are the best. Yang Xinxin's face flushed slightly, and her smile deepened. Liang Yu took a deep breath, and asked nervously, that is to say, it is now certain that the people from Yangsheng base kidnapped my students, right? Zhang Yi said, if there are no accidents, it should be them. How can there be so many coincidences in this world? Liang Yu said, okay, contact them quickly. See what they want to do. Zhang Yi didn't speak, but crossed his arms and lowered his head to think for a while. After thinking about it, Zhang Yi raised his head and said, okay, then talk to them. Liang Yu looked happy, thinking that there was hope for rescuing the students. But Zhang Yi said to her seriously, but Liang Yu, there is one thing I must tell you clearly in advance. I can understand that you are eager to save people, but communicating with them is no child's play. It is very dangerous. Once we reveal any flaws, they will attack without hesitation. So you can watch from the sidelines, but you can't show that you care too much about the students. Otherwise, they will definitely make the lion talk. Do you understand? Liang Yu bowed her head and pondered for a moment, then nodded firmly. Okay, I promise you.
Hey there! This concludes the explanation up to the latest chapter release. Stay tuned for the next chapter breakdown as soon as it's available.